Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with crispy everything flatbread. That's right. Not only do these everything bagel inspired flatbreads taste twice as good as anything from the store, they are also like 20 times cheaper to make yourself. Okay, have you priced a box of fancy crackers or flatbreads lately? I mean, it's kind of crazy. Although that wouldn't necessarily be a good enough reason to make these yourself if they took a long time and were really hard to do. But these are not. These are actually quite simple to make, not to mention fun. So with that, let's go ahead and get started by making a very, very primitive dough, which will begin with 2 different flours, some white all-purpose flour, and then an equal amount of some kind of whole grain flour. And today I'll be using some sprouted spelt flour, which is my personal favorite whole grain flour. But use whatever you want. And then to that we will add some salt, as well as some freshly ground black pepper, and of course a couple shakes of cayenne. And then because we're mimicking an everything bagel, we will add some granulated garlic, or garlic powder, which is the same thing, only finer, as well as some onion powder, or again granulated onion. And I'll talk about those subtle differences in the blog post. And that's actually going to be it for the dry stuff. And what we'll do at this point is take a whisk and give this a mix. And we will stir that for about a half a minute or so, or until we think everything's evenly distributed. And then once that's set, we can stop, and we'll add a little bit of olive oil, followed by some very warm water, right? Basically something close to hot bath water. And then what we're going to do is get in there with our bare hand and mix this until we formed a nice smooth ball of dough. And as you do this, you're probably going to have 3 different thoughts. The first one would be, this stuff is way too wet, it's not going to work. Followed by, this is way too dry, it's not going to work. And then finally, once it all comes together, the third thought you'll have is, oh no, wait, this is fine. It totally worked. And now I feel bad for doubting Chef John. Well, you know what? It's fine. Don't worry about it. Those are completely normal feelings, and I still get them. But you'll see eventually you will end up with a beautiful, nice, smooth, slightly soft, but not sticky dough. And then what we'll do once our dough's been balled is go ahead and wrap it in plastic and let it rest for about an hour or so, which you can do right on the table if you want. Or if it's going to be a little longer, go ahead and pop it in the fridge, which is what I did. And then when we're ready to use it, we'll go ahead and pull it out. And we will unwrap it and cut it in half, since I think it's probably a little easier to work with half at a time. And then what we'll do on a floured surface is go ahead and press and roll this out into a rectangle about 1/8 of an inch thick or less. And as usual, we will only use enough flour to keep it from sticking. All right, a little bit's always okay, but we don't want to work a lot of flour into the dough. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a little bit of a tougher product than we want. And then what we'll do as soon as that dough is rolled out as thin as we want, which like I said is going to be about 1/8 of an inch or maybe slightly under, is that we'll carefully pick that up and transfer it onto a lined baking sheet. And we'll go ahead and smooth that out. And then what we need to do at this point, as soon as our dough has a pan under it, is brush the top very, very lightly with water. Okay, we don't want it sopping wet, but we do want that surface a little bit moist and slightly sticky. And that's so that the seeds we're about to add properly adhere. So we'll go ahead and very lightly but thoroughly brush that all over, at which point we can go ahead and sprinkle over our sesame seeds and our poppy seeds, which besides the onion and garlic, are the signature ingredients on an everything bagel. And by the way, any edible seed's going to work here. So if you want to use something else, feel free. I mean, you are after all the Bill and Ted of this excellent crispy flatbread. So if you're feeling adventurous, you could use things like chia seeds or hemp seeds or flax. Any of that stuff will work just fine with this technique. And then besides the seeds, I like to finish up with a little sprinkling of sea salt. Or I'm using some beautiful fleur de sel from France, which has a lovely large grain. And then what we'll do is give this a gentle pressing before we flip it over, which may seem like an unnecessary step, but it is not. It is so necessary. And I'm definitely going to explain why in a few moments. But what we'll do is go ahead and flip that over before taking a pizza cutter or dull knife and cutting this into whatever shape pieces we want. All right, we can go squares, we can go triangles, or we can attempt to do some diamond shapes like I'm doing here, which is done by making some straight cuts lengthwise and then making some cuts across at like 45 degrees. And while I'm doing this, I will explain. The reason we flip the dough over so the seeds are underneath is so that as these bake, the edges will curl in the right direction. Okay, a properly made seeded flatbread will always have the seeds on the concave side never on the convex side. And by the way, that's all going to be a lot easier to understand once this bakes. But anyway, we'll go ahead and cut those any which way we want. At which point they are ready to transfer into the center of a 375-degree oven for about 20 minutes or so, or until golden brown, bubbled, and very crispy. Okay, if these things are still soft and flexible after they cool, you did not cook them long enough. But these were perfect, so I'm going to go ahead and flip them over. And as I'm doing this, you can really see why we wanted to flip that dough over so the seeds were on the bottom. Okay, because of the way the edges curl up as this bakes, now we have all our beautiful seeds on the concave side of the cracker, which would always be the side we'd want to dip or spread stuff on. All right, if our seeds are on the convex side, that just seems kind of weird. I mean, it's going to taste the same, but I don't want to be spreading things on a hump, which I find very disconcerting. And then, very important, before we pack these away or pile them up in a basket like I'm going to do, we have to let them cool completely, otherwise they're going to kind of steam and get soggy. So I went ahead and let mine cool before I transferred them into a cracker basket, which is a basket for crackers. And I went in for the official taste. And because of our garlic and onion and salt and sesame seeds and poppy seeds, these really are delicious enough to eat by themselves. But let's not kid ourselves, since that's probably not going to happen. And you may have already seen these paired with a beautiful sweet potato hummus, which really was absolutely amazing. So these are going to be perfect with any dipper spread. Or of course paired with a nice soft, preferably funky cheese, like this one here for example that I forgot the name of. Alright, fine, I didn't forget. It's French and I can't pronounce it. But that's not important. What's important is that it was magnificent. Or should I say magnifique. And then for one final serving suggestion, since the everything bagel is what inspired these, they really would be incredible with some smoked salmon cream cheese on top, with maybe a little bit of caper red onion and chive. And of the half a dozen different ways I ate these, this was probably my favorite. But regardless of which you serve these with, or whether your seeds are on the concave or convex side, I really do hope you give them a try soon. So head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.